Well, I've gone as far as I can go. I went way farther north than where I normally hunt. I'm way up where I went snooping around during elk season. I found a whole pile of deer sign around here, but they're left. There's nobody out here. Holy. I get some service, or if I set up the dish, I'll show you guys where I am. I got no problem showing anybody where I am right here, because I'm not going to be hunting here at all. I'm definitely out there. I might sit on top of my quad, set up the camera for a bit and hang. See what we got in the inbox. Looks like he's coming our way. Hopefully we can scare him away. Alright, so there we go. A bit of a view. There's a bit of a better view on the top, like way up, but it's so windy up there. It's absolutely ridiculous. I couldn't get out of it. So I had to go over the top of the mountain, drop back down as far as I can go, which is, this is it, dead end. And face that mountain range there. So, we're out of the wind. Taking my break. Did a huge hike this morning. And I have to go to plan B tomorrow. Well, not really plan B. I know where to find the deer. I just thought I found a new hotspot earlier this summer, or in September up in this mountain, but it turns out it's not. But you gotta go look, right? What I'm after is I'm after a deer to hunt. I'm not just hunting deer. I'm after a big, old, huge, prime, past his prime, monstrous buck. But I gotta find him first. I don't even know who it is yet, but I'll find one. And once I recognize the sign, it's game on. So there you go. That's what I'm doing. Now, this is titled, A Life Lived Haunted. Please do not use my name. I have a reputation in my community. Now, some of these may be repeats from years ago. I don't know. We're going to find out. No big deal if it is. I mean, there's only, what, a couple 100,000 new people here. And I'm trying to get these emails sorted in my notes. But anyway, here we go. Steve, I hope this email finds you well and rested. I'm a 50-year-old white male who is 1/8 Cherokee and the rest Scottish, Irish ancestry. I come from an old American Southern family. I'm a U.S. Air Force Gulf War veteran and master mason. Maybe my history might lead you to consider what I'm about to tell you. I've never told anyone this, because I do not wish to be labeled crazy. I found your YouTube channel a while ago. You seem to be understanding of the facts of these creatures and what can accompany these entities that seem to walk in our forests. My first memory is when I was very young. I was reared in the suburbs of Atlanta, Georgia. At that time, urban sprawl had not happened, and lots of land that is now cement and asphalt was wooded county. I woke in the middle of the night to feel a presence of being watched. And as I ran to my parents' room, I passed the bathroom. The bathroom had a window that was 9 feet high on the outside of the house. As I looked into the empty bathroom, I saw a strange creature looking at me through the window. And later on in life, I would discover the face I saw looked like what is called Bigfoot. My parents did not believe me when I told them I saw a face in the bathroom window, as it was 9 feet off the ground. Shortly after that, we moved into an abandoned old South mansion in East Atlanta. This land and structures were haunted by American Civil War soldiers from the Battle of Atlanta. But I'm not here to tell you those stories. Later on, my grandmother, who was half Cherokee, told me a story about a Bigfoot that came to visit our family, Derry, in DeKalb County. Every spring and autumn, this creature would spend a few days living in the farmhouse cellar and stealing 50-pound jugs of unprocessed milk. And it would also take a few of our chickens. I remember this. I'm going to keep going. My grandfather would want to go kill it or run it off, as it was eating and drinking his profit. My grandmother convinced him it was best to leave it alone, and it would soon leave. She remembered stories being told to her by her tribe to leave the creatures alone, and they will leave you alone. She said they were a Native American tribe, just like the Cherokee, and deserve respect. One fall season, not sure of the year, my grandfather was out in the fields looking to see if the corn was ready for harvest. He saw a creature run across the dirt road and disappear into the corn. He grew corn to feed our dairy herd. He told me once he saw it, he felt compelled to chase it, so off he went after it through the corn rows. My grandfather was a true man's man. He feared nothing. He would never back down. And as he was chasing this Bigfoot through the corn, he began to think, if I find this creature, all he has in his pocket is a folding pocket knife. He told us at that moment he felt fear and dread and began to run opposite the direction the creature went. When he arrived back at the truck, he noticed his leather jacket had been torn to shreds on his back. To this day, we do not know if the creature did it or just the corn. Pretty tough for corn to pull that shit off. I enlisted in the Air Force at age 20. My first duty station was Ellison Air Force Base just south of Fairbanks, Alaska. And while in Alaska, I became a prolific fisherman, hunter, and trapper. I fully embraced the outdoors and the spectacular beauty of the outdoors. If I was not deployed or on duty, I was in the bush. I never came across anything that I could not account to grizzly bears. I was traveling by truck from Ellison Air Force Base to Elmendorf Air Force Base, which is Anchorage. The truck blew a tire and the spare was flat. We were literally stranded in the middle of nowhere. At that time, not much traffic would be on that highway. Several miles back, we had noticed a cache, a group of long cabins suspended by logs that looked abandoned. We decided to walk to the cache. Upon arriving there, we were relieved to find it was inhabited. In true Arctic fashion, they took us in and fed us and gave us shelter. They had a ham radio that was used to get a spare tire flown in by bush plane, but that would take a few days. And over the next few days, I began to ask about any possible Bigfoot sightings. I figured if this creature was here in Alaska, these people who lived in the middle of nowhere would have seen them. Slowly, they opened up and began to tell their stories of Bigfoot sightings in conjunction with UFO sightings. This got my attention quickly because I too had UFO sightings in the southeast U.S. Me and my buddy were in civilian clothes, but once our host discovered we were in Air Force Base, in the U.S. Air Force, all talk of Bigfoot and UFOs stopped. I was upset, but I didn't want to piss off these people that had saved us from the bush, and other paranormal activities happened in Alaska, but no Bigfoot. After Alaska, I was sent to Travis Air Force Base in California. It was a beautiful location, with Sacramento to the north, San Francisco to the west, and the Sierra Nevada mountains to the east. I did not hunt in California due to extreme gun laws at the time. Most of my firearms were California illegal, so I sent them home to Georgia. Fishing became my obsession, and trout was my game. I learned to use a fly rod and fish the hell out of the Sierra Nevada mountains. We'd set up a fish camp and fish every available weekend. I did have several scary stories in the mountains with lights in the mountains and forest, and lots of animal movement after dark. I started asking questions about Bigfoot since I was in his backyard. And every old-timer I talked with had an encounter story that also involved lights in the forest. We'd find tracks on the outskirts of our camp, but decided they were just bear tracks. If it were a Bigfoot, it was a big one. I had enough of the military life and was eager to go back to my home state of Georgia. And after returning home with my wife, I found ourselves house-sitting for her sister. She lived toward Athens, Georgia, from Conyers. It was totally rural, and her property sat upon a hill. The backyard had motion lights that would shine down just at the tree line that backed up into the wild woods. My sister-in-law had a couple of daughters. I received a call from my wife asking if I could get off work early. A couple of boys had scared the girls, and she did not know what to do. I arrived at the house and became the alpha male when dealing with these boys. Thinking the boys had scared the girls for fun, we talked in the backyard. They told me that the four of them had hiked deep into the woods and discovered what they thought were Native American mounds and tree structures. Upon finding this, they thought it was wise to have a seance. I was a little upset at this point, as I was a missionary for the Southern Baptist in the Caribbean. Nevertheless, they continued. They told of a giant hair-covered man that appeared and chased them home. As they told me the story, my eyes caught sight of red eye shine just past the floodlights. I asked what color were its eyes. They said red, and had a foul smell. I told the boys to look at what I was looking at, and they immediately went to their car and drove off. I called my wife and asked her to go to our house and collect my 12-gauge and slugs and double-aught buckshot shells. She was concerned, but did as I asked. Steve, I sat in that backyard all night with a loaded 12-gauge, watching red eye shine try to get close to the house. It circled all around the property, but always stayed just outside of the floodlights. The next day, we found some drawings the girls had made, and it was alarming. The girls had drawn what looks like gray aliens and Bigfoot looking in the bedroom windows at night. Moving on to hunting, my hunting buddy and I leased a 1,000-acre tract of land in Zebulon, Georgia. This property is rich in white-tailed deer and turkey. We had several tree stands all over the property and a small stream that divided the land. We had some friends from South Georgia come up to hunt, and as we hunted wild boar with them the weekend before. We had some friends from South Georgia come up to hunt as we hunted wild boar with them the weekend before. Most of my tree stands were near the small stream. I just put the last guy in the tree and was heading to my tree that I was going to hunt from when I heard something walking on two legs at my pace. When I stopped, it stopped. The moon was full, but I was in an old hardwood forest, and the moonlight did not hit the forest floor. The faster I moved, the faster it moved, and it was then I saw a shadowy figure, and it was huge. I was struck with fear. It was bow season, all I had was a compound bow, and the only way I could move was to grab an arrow, set the knock, and tell myself I'm the baddest MFer in the woods. It followed me to the clearing where our trucks were parked. I got my truck until the sun came up. No one else in my hunting party had any strange happenings, so I kept it to myself. Toward the end of the season that year, we were having no luck in our morning stands, so we thought to hunt our evening stands in the morning. Big mistake. My stand was on the end of a large open field. We'd always enter the woods 2 hours before sunup to let the woods go quiet after we were in our stands. I reached my tree and attached my rifle to the rope. I felt like I was being watched and just shook it off. And upon climbing the tree, I reached my stand and started to pull up my rifle. At this point, I saw 2 red eyes at the base of the tree looking up. Once I had my rifle, I chambered around and turned on the flashlight. There's nothing there, but the eyes were now on the other side of the tree. I chased this thing the rest of the night till sunup and could never get a light on it. There were no footprints or tracks of any kind, and when I met my hunting buddy later that morning, he was wanting to get out of the woods fast. We've never talked about it since, and I no longer hunt. I've always thought the woods were alive, and now I know it's true. I became a Cub Scout assistant leader for my son's pack. We were camped at Lake West Point in Georgia. Cub Scout rule is always go with a buddy, never go alone. And due to my work, we arrived at camp after dark, and the only spot available was far away from the rest of the pack on the lakeshore. Before setting up camp, my wife saw several orbs of light in our campsite. I was using a huge 14-man cabin tent with 3 rooms with dividers. We made camp and settled in for the sleep. My wife woke me, whispering to me that someone was walking around our tent. The tent is 10 feet tall. I heard the footsteps on the leaves then. From the top of the 10-foot tent to the bottom of the tent, something ran its fingernail down the side my wife was sleeping on. And scouts, you're not to bring firearms, but I never go in the woods without one. Good for you. Upon hearing this, I jumped up with a .45 ACP in one hand and a flashlight in the other. Exiting the tent, I saw nothing. It was dead quiet, nothing out of the ordinary. And after I walked around the tent several times, I got back in the tent and went to sleep. And in the morning, my son had to go to the restroom, so I walked him up the outhouse. We both saw an upright, all-black, fur-covered being jump off the road into the woods. Other campers had reported a bear, but this was no bear. No bears lived this far south. When we arrived home, I started searching the web about Lake West Point, and I was amazed to discover it was full of Bigfoot, ghost, and UFO stories. And I have no idea what these creatures are. Cherokee called them Sul Kalu, and my Northern European ancestors called them wild men. They seem to have always been here. I don't venture off the trails or go deep into the national forest anymore, and I also follow missing 411, and I think there are several things that we, the tax-paying public, are not told. Is there ever? I still go fishing, but I'm always armed. And the forest creatures are not all you have to worry about. Humans are evil too. Many times I've been in a fishing spot, either on the bank or in my kayak, and my sixth sense tells me to leave, and I do. Unless you have felt it, it's hard to describe. You can carry an exposed firearm in national forest, but you cannot fly a drone. Why are they hiding? What are they hiding in the forest from us? We need disclosure, and I'm sure it is stranger than we can imagine. There seems to be a spiritual or paranormal connection. Truth is stranger than fiction, and I hope to live to see the truth. I hope that this little bit of information may lead to connecting the dots. Steve, keep going and be strong. And I will. Man, I remember bits and parts of that one. There you go, you guys. Yeah, I'm into an older folder, but there's a handful of them that weren't marked as not read. And like I explained earlier, the loss of a phone before this phone really sucked and screwed things up. It is what it is, no big deal. It's free, right? Now the wind's licking. I don't know if it's licking that GoPro or not. Gotta use the GoPro because I left the 128 gig SD card somewhere for my other camera. Oops. If I was to travel that way, straight across, other side of those mountains, go that way, I would end up in Pink Mountain, British Columbia. I'm just as far north as Pink Mountain. I think I might be able to show you guys where I am here. Maybe. See if the satellite's picking it up. I'm out there. You see the blue dot? Oops. I don't know if you can see that or not. The screen in the front's not showing me nothing, but there I am. A little ways from home. A little ways. I'll tell you another story and I'm going to show you a couple of pictures. A side note story. When Sarah got her elk, we're in kind of thick push. And the wind was coming uphill. And we were talking out loud, had the quad there by now, and Sarah's standing on the other side of the elk, and I'm cutting away and cutting quarters off, and all of a sudden we heard a crash in the bushes right on the other side of the spruce tree that we were against. Her eyeballs were the size of frickin' saucers. And then I went into instant fight mode. And I'm just like, no, why now? Not with Sarah here, you know what I mean? Like, not a bear, not a grizzly right here, right now. Why? Damn it. And I'm starting to get fired up and ready to go. And then I gotta stay calm so she doesn't shit herself, but she's shitting herself anyway. I'm just telling her to stay calm. Everything's fine, all right? She's like, yep. It's right there on the other side of the tree. And I go, just go get on the other side of the quad. And we left her gun at the truck. We had to go back, hike all the way back, get the quad, the chainsaw, and cut the quad up the mountain into the elk kill. And then I started there being quiet, and then I went half moon around the tree this way, half moon around that way, looking, because sometimes a grizzly bear comes in to steal that kill off of you. There has been, people have been killed from that. It's happened in BC. So it took me a while to put my guard down somewhat, and that's certain there wasn't a bear. I thought, okay, well, maybe it's just a moose. Maybe a moose came up the ridge, because there's a ridge in the timber right here too. But anyway, I left trail cameras here after that. Nothing happened. And sure enough, here's a picture of us on the quad going to get her elk on the one trail camera. Hopefully you can see that. I'll check it after, and if not, I'll edit it in. Right? Look at the size of this frickin' bear coming right behind us. Oops. That is a freaking big bear. Yeah, so I discovered that this morning on my trail camera. I also discovered a great big buck for all you fellow hunters out there. I got one huge whitetail that I've been watching for 3 years, and I think I'm going to make a play for him. And he showed up a couple weeks ago, but he's not consistent, so it's going to take a bit of an effort to get him. And that was on my trail camera. And a bunch of other stuff, but those are the highlights. I'm going to text the bear picture to Sarah earlier. And said there was a bear behind us. All right, here we go. Let me read this one more. It's from the older folders, all right? It's not marked as read, and I'm going to read it. Unusual encounter, not a Sasquatch. Hold on a minute. That was read. All right. This sounds familiar, but a lot of people come right in with the same title. My 3 unusual Sasquatch experiences is the title of this email. We'll see. It's not marked as read. I don't know why. Dear Steve, thank you for taking the bull by the horns on this topic by giving good, down-to-earth people a platform to not only share their story, but also by creating a medium that can help people cope with their own experiences. No problem. It's too easy. I've always had a special connection and respect with nature and all the spectacular power, wisdom, and unknowns she holds. I also have been given the gift of discovering signs from nature from those who have transitioned to help those people that feel they have been left behind with their own grief. Please trust me when I say there is tremendous beauty in this, but it comes with dedication to want to make our world a better place, and it's no coincidence that the foundation of all this connectivity is through nature. As a young child, I had many dreams of Sasquatch that were very unnerving, but I always felt comfort and peace, like they were always watching over me. Those were the days when it was not unusual to take off after breakfast in the morning and not come back until supper. If I concentrated hard enough, I could go back to the same dream of Sasquatch and carry on from where I left off. Crazy. I attribute this to the purity of youth before the world, as most people see it, casts its shadow over those who slowly disconnect from nature. How absolutely wonderful it is at 55 years old to still go for a walk in nature and turn over rocks, pull bark off stumps, find your own walking stick, etc. I'm so proud to have taught my son this, and at 21 years old, we still take time to explore even while hunting, fishing, or hiking. And this brings me to my first experience. My wife's son and I were on our way back from an extra long weekend at our hunting camp. It was late October, and there was no one else in the entire valley. It was late afternoon, and we'd just seen a rabbit, already getting his white hair run across the road. We had seen many that weekend, but for some unusual reason, I stopped the truck and grabbed my 6-7-year-old son, and we just walked off the side of the road into an area that I knew was quite nice, damp and quiet, no guns. This dense canopy, but open under area, slowly cascaded into a small river that was fed by the steep mountain range, locally named Butt, within the Rockies. There was an area that few hunters ever challenged directly across the uphill from where we stood. Matter of fact, I only ever knew of one person who challenged through this area, but said never again, and nor ever spoke of it, which I found unusual. Nonetheless, I always felt that tingle you get at the back of your neck when I was close to this area. Probably only a couple of minutes had passed from when we hopped out of the truck, and all of a sudden, we heard the most powerful, high-pitched shrill, almost in fear or surprise, perhaps, from seeing us, or maybe a warning. I've heard nothing like it in the 40-ish years that I've been in the bush. I tried to maintain my composure in front of my son as I directed him and went immediately back to the truck. But I knew something was near and felt like it was watching us, but I had no inclination to dig any deeper. My wife was as big-eyed, apprehensive, and confused as I was when my son and I got back to the truck. I literally was looking out the back of my head when we were walking back to the truck. It's confusing when you experience these unknowns. We just file them in the back of our minds and we don't talk of them. My second experience in the same drainage, maybe 5 kilometers as the crow flies, but on the side opposite of the range. It was mid to late September, a year or so after this first experience. I was by myself and hiked into a nice location that I could sit down, pop up my spot scope, and have a sandwich. I've been glassing for about an hour. I find time sure flies by when you're comfortable in spotting beautiful country. There was a long green slide with sparse alpine either side that gradually uphilled into some very steep but green terrain before you were rocked out. This is where we usually see the big muleys this time of year. I was ready to wrap it up when I decided to glass another location, which you typically never glass, as it's just a dry rock outcrop with no feed and a hot southwest exposure. I had to shake my head and rub my eyes when I thought what I had seen was a large man/hunter sitting down on a rock, but strangely dressed in black. It would be about a 2-hour chew just to get to where he was, if you could actually even get there. I still couldn't believe it, but when I looked back, it had disappeared. I then scanned the area very hard, but nothing, as I couldn't believe what I had seen. I then tried to gauge the size of the hunter that was dressed in black. After about a minute of comparison to the size of some adjacent trees and trunks and branches, etc., I soon calculated that this was no hunter at all, as he would have had to have been what I could conservatively estimate as 9 to 12 foot tall, with 16 to 20 inch diameter thighs, dressed in black, with no backpack or gun. And strangely enough, I felt that it had been watching me before I even seen it, and it decided to disappear before I could take a closer look after my disbelief of what I had just seen. Now, this third experience may sound strange. My wife and son and I were trolling a Ford fender in a dry fly in the late afternoon. The sun was about an hour before it was blocked out by the mountain peaks. It was one of those times when the lake was like a sheet of glass. You could see the smoke pipes from the camps lighting up from across the lake, and you could hear the voices, but not make out what they were saying, reverberate over the water. We made our last turn to head back to the boat launch, and were just off of and beside a steep rock face that plunged deep through the water. My wife suddenly said, "Hey, what's that? On the rock face right there," as she pointed. We could only get about 150 feet from it, and believe it or not, it was what my son termed, "It looks like a big turd, Dad." I read this, I remember that. "It looks like a big turd, Dad." As sure as I'm writing you, in fact was exactly that. There was no way humanly possible without rappelling from the top that you could get to it either. And you could not park your ass over the rock face above and land it where it was without a big splout or where it was located. Whatever planted this there was not your average sized person either, if you catch my drift. This was only about 10 kilometers from where my first experience happened. And over the years that we have spent in this area, we have run into two different parties, non-related and at different places, but both coming to look for what one party said was Bigfoot, and the other party said was Sasquatch. The second party were about 5 to 6 younger men who had been thinning trees in an old burn and had seen something they could not explain, so they wanted to go explore. But with numbers. We've also heard of stories of very large rocks landing near boaters on the lake, where we were told by virtue of the size of the rock it was not humanly possible to throw them as far. If you'd like pictures of this area, I'd be happy to share them with you. I can tell you, it is in the southeast corner of British Columbia that we often refer to as the Serengeti of North America, given the diversity of the wildlife within this haven. Thank you again, Steve, for your time and sacrifice, and likely money out of pocket for helping those of us who genuinely can find peace by going back into and reuniting with nature that helps us find the solutions to navigate our daily challenges. Your practical but proven approach in how to portray yourself, which represents who and what you believe, is genuinely appreciated, and your dedication is very motivating. I hope to meet you one day. And there you go. That's a good email. Well, I don't rate them, but kind words. The man knows what he's talking about. I believe everything he saw. He shared. Take from what you will or leave it, right? And I'm in the middle of nowhere here. The middle of nowhere here. Lots of elk tracks around, but the deer seem to have been started heading out already, so I'm gonna have to go put a lot of miles on my boots to figure out where they are. I've got my locator going. I haven't done it for like over a year. I don't know why, I just don't, but there's too much weird stuff going on in BC right now. There's another guy, my firefighter buddy told me about another guy that went missing in Red Fern Lake the other day, British Columbia. Another man. Then we got the other guy whose rifle, backpack, and all of his gear were in his truck. And everything, wallet, the whole 9 yards, and he's missing. Him and his dog, gone. Now we got the legs showing up where I run around all the time. So, I flashed up the InReach, which is an electronic tracker. So I can be tracked. I always joke with Sarah, I go, what'd you do if you went online, went on the website and saw where I was and I was actually orbiting the planet? That kind of sucked for her. It'd be interesting for me. Anyway, I'm gonna get moving. Once I get back, I don't feel like setting up the Starlink here. I'm gonna get on the move, but once I get back, I will carve open the emails and dive in and get a whole bunch of unheard voices and organize it a little better for this upcoming days. I think that's all I was going to share with you guys today anyway. And on the leg, probably a lot of people are asking questions about if it was severed or chopped off or if it had been eaten at all. But yeah, there's definitely signs of the animals of the forest chewing on it for sure was the word. So it didn't say if it was absolutely cut off or not. It sounded like it had been chewed on a bit. Obviously, I mean, rats will eat the shit out of it, right? On the one end, and so will the ravens and the magpies. Birds will clean up pretty quick. So no, there wasn't a clean sever mark on that human leg found that I know of, but I'll get to the bottom of it. I'll talk to the guy who found it and get the description, get him to take me there. I'll figure it out. I'll figure something out. I'll get a good idea what did or didn't happen, right? Anyway, share my story, howtohunt.com. Get it shared. If I remember, I'll put some of my trail camera videos on the end of this one. You can see how big that frickin' bear was. Holy cow, that was a big bear. Weird. And that's it. That's all she wrote. I'm out of here. I'll be back tomorrow. All right. There's the view.